everybody, to another riveting adventure of Never Ending Adventure Podcast, the podcast where we talk about adventure time. And I'm the expert, your host, DJ Nettie P. Joined along with me is your co-host,
Russell Tyndall. And Ned, my king.
Oh, I'm
wake
king
up, my
now.
co-host. I was going to carry that further and say, wake up, my husband. But, you know, that's not our relationship. It could be. No, it couldn't. You're married.
Could be. I could have just, I had that ability years ago.
Not our preferences.
Leave Jackie and just marry Russell. But I really wanted to.
It was wild. We're starting this off on a wild note. Y'all, how's it going? I hope everybody's been having a good beginning of the week. Ned, how have you been feeling?
It's not been a bad week, not been a great week, just normal. Been a normal-ish week, normal-ish podcast days. It's hot. It's getting hot down here in Atlanta.
Oh yeah, I've been feeling a little gross, and it could be the heat. It could be the fact that we had to watch 2 episodes this recording because we're about to record another one after this, and in doing so, I had to watch a freaking episode about Ricardio, and now I almost can't think about anything other than how much I dislike Ricardio.
Was prepping for this episode, and it was kind of like that one sticks so much in your head from like just aggressiveness that I was like, "What's the first episode we're doing?" Oh yeah, it's the King Worm Dreamscape episode.
Which is a good episode. I do enjoy talking about King Worm, and there's some good theories here, I suppose, and whatnot. But we'll get into that a little bit later on, certainly. And I also, we did Rex, I think, at the beginning of maybe the last episode or the episode before that.
Episode or 2 ago,
I got nothing for y'all, man. I got no Rex this episode. We're just going to skip right over that, I think, at the end, unless Ned has something good.
If I come up with a solid rec before the end of the episode, I will give you one. But this is maybe my recommendation is just like rest. Just rest.
Yeah, rest.
That
might be what we needed. Yeah. No, that's so funny because we also were talking about like, oh man, we were always so tired on this podcast. Anyways, enough stupid meta podcast host talk. Ned, I wanted to, if we're talking about dreams and we're talking about, really they're kind of hypnotized in this, but it is dream sequences. Mm-hmm. I was curious, off the gun, Princess Bubblegum's calling Finn my king. So what does like you being a king symbolize in dreams? And we looked it up a little bit. And dreaming about being a king could symbolize feeling like we deserve better, which for Finn could be he deserves better from Princess Bubblegum, which is an interesting little bit there. And then also being a king could be ambition to achieve greatness or looking to impress someone, which again could completely apply to Princess Bubblegum for Finn. So that was really interesting. It starts off like that, where he's dreaming of being, the king to Princess Bubblegum.
Yeah, well, I mean, it starts out in a dream. Now, it kind of almost feels like he wakes up in this dream, almost like he's waking up from a dream, because he's like, where am I? What am I doing? He seems like he's already pretty self-aware. He's not playing along with it. Which, in my opinion, is kind of like why it's like the very like hypnotic sequence. And I'm not reading into too much of what he's dreaming about per se, because if you do think about it, he's like very aware early on. He's like, this is not real. This is a dream.
Yeah, it's all messed up. You got the banana soldiers are flipping around and
upside down and all that stuff.
Upside down and
now,
stuff.
I did jump right into one of my deep thoughts of the episode, because it pertains to what you're saying, where it's like this little scene with him and Princess Bubblegum, and she's like head over heels for him, and like if he marries Princess Bubblegum, also I don't really think that means he becomes king, because I think that she's still like, or she becomes queen. I don't know. All these kingdoms have princesses, but they don't have. I guess you never see. I mean, I guess there's Ice King, but it's always
maybe
funny.
He'd be a prince. But it's just like how there's only one queen, right? Which is the vampire queen.
The only other funny thing I noticed about this is it jumps really quickly from the whole scene with Princess Bubblegum and him being the king, and that being how he envisions a successful relationship with her, right? Then it jumps right to Flame Princess, and Flame Princess is just feeding him soup in the forest.
That's good. Yeah.
And she is, I guess, taking care of him, and even to an aggressive point where she's just like, eat that freaking soup.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and her eyes turn into mouths and stuff.
I think that is important. And maybe in the way this is, Finn's subconscious mind taking over his, I guess, conscious state of being. But like the dreamscape is his subconscious mind. So all of these little characters that are happening around him are his subconscious mind. And I do think it's because he sees Peebles as like she's a princess and I'd be a king, and this is what our relationship would look like. But he really sees Flame Princess as a caretaker, as somebody who like he can sit in the treehouse with and eat a bowl of soup, even if she has like little mouths for eyes or whatever. So it's just definitely a juxtaposition between, it just immediately kicks off with in a throne with Princess Bubblegum, and then in the treehouse with Flame Princess. And I just wanted to call that out good. as a good juxtaposition between the two of them.
No, that's a really great point. My mind hadn't even gone there, because it was interesting to me that he's thinking about both of them, but that makes sense with all the current events that have been going on, or the recent events that have been going on over the past 5 episodes or so. We've had a number of, or really just a slew of relationship things and whatnot going on in the season. But I was so distracted by meanings of the dream. I mean, I was even curious, like, what do worms mean in dreams, which could be anxiety that is stopping you from being the best version of yourself, right? Or getting through, could mean Finn will experience personal growth. So maybe through seeing worms, I was like, maybe there will be some sort of a growth, or this is symbolizing that we're turning some sort of a corner. But I don't know. I wish I had the answer for, can we combine the things that I'm talking about, the symbolism of the king in dreams and the worms in dreams, and then what you're talking about, the two different relationships? But it feels like this episode just throws that out there and then flies past it so quickly. And it almost doesn't feel like it's worth diving too deep into, or at least deeper into it than we already have.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think you could go too far in either direction. If you look at it not enough like you are, like not enough like where there's some meeting, then this episode is just like, hey, how trippy balls episode can we make a dream? Which they did a really good job at, like, making that entertaining, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, my tops for this episode is straight up the creative writing. I love
that's a new one for you.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I love the idea, like, of being in that room, and it must have been so fun to come up with, what could happen, what weird things could be happening, what could be showing Finn that, this isn't like reality, like he's got taller ears than he normally does on his hat, or the mirror is reflecting some other version of him that we've never seen before. Jake's,
well, we'll get into that.
Yeah, acting a little goofy, a little weird, or, it seemed like it must have been a freaking blast to talk about in some sort of a creative writing room.
Yeah, I mean, storyboarding it had to have been really fun. Again, just like being able to change settings like that and make the settings kind of like a little bit off or a little bit weird. And I'm sure they could put it together really quickly, because it's just like, oh yeah. And then this is the first episode where they actually call Peppermint Butler Pep Butt. Yeah. And he just throw a separate head on him. And then now, there's others that, going back to my original thought, yeah, you could really just make it like that, where it's just creative writing and it's fun and it just makes for a good story. And then you could overdo it on your end. Like, does everything have a meaning? Does Pep Butt talking out of his hand have a meaning? Does the fact that the room is flipped upside down with Jake and Lady have a meaning when things are upside down, And I think if you go too far in either direction, it's going to be a mess. We're going to have a mess of a podcast episode if we go too far in either direction.
Yeah. I mean, this is a little bit of a mess of an episode to kind of, this may be early to be diving into this, but
I think that we'll have plenty of time to dive into whatever. I think we have more theories than we are expecting each other to have. Yeah. So I think we should just freaking go. Just go with it.
All right. Yeah. Well, I think for a little bit of context of what's happening here, we should go back to Evicted season 1, episode 12, right? Which is where Marceline comes in, takes over their house, kicks them out. Then they go house hunting and whatnot. Then at the end of the episode, when they finally get their house back from Marceline and they go into the living room, they come across King Worm, and he just immediately hypnotizes them. But he just is like, "Oh, hey guys, come here, friends, hug me. Oh yeah, hug me." And that, in a sense, really irks me, Ned. It really kind of pisses me off.
I remember you talking about the end of that episode when we recorded it, and you're like, what the fuck just happened? Like at the end of Evicted. And it was the fact that there was this...
happen?
No,
like,
so
is any of this real?
I was trying to go back, and I actually watched a YouTube video today, kind of addressing the end of Evicted, and the fact that King Worm was there, and that now he appears here, but they're breaking the dream. And that I think it was Rebecca Sugar went to Penn Ward and was like, hey man, because we're writing this, does that mean everything between Evicted and now has been fake? Have they been in this weird dream sequence? And Penn was like, no, it's not.
Were they hypnotized twice by King Worm? Is this a second situation where they've come across?
I've thought about this, and this is why I was a little nervous to come into this episode. However, I would say that... yes, it is the second time. I think King Worm, also, it was originally supposed to be an Evicted of a werewolf that was living on the top of their house that was supposed to just randomly show up at the end of the episode. But then they were like, let's make it this worm and make it weird or whatever. So I think the worm is back to feed on their life energy. I think that whatever happened, he just hasn't been there. He's just feeding on some life energy.
So
I don't think that... One of my big notices in this episode is that they reference almost every main character we've seen now. We've got Peppa, we've got Lady, we've got everybody pretty much but Marceline in this episode. And then secondly, we have a list of almost every fear that Finn has experienced in the last 4 seasons referenced. I don't think that would be there if he had been experiencing a psychotic dream sequence for the last 4 seasons.
Well, if he was doing that the entire time, the issue with that is Flame Princess is in it, right? Jake's violin is broken from the episode where they're the band and they're trying to open up the door. So
there's consistencies with the characters, with where we are in the story.
Yeah, he wouldn't have known about that.
That exist outside, and especially after this episode's done, the world is back to normal, not in a post-stream state. So I think that kind of puts that theory to rest. I've been worried about this episode because of that. So I think it got put to rest.
In my mind, I'm just like, this is a seasonal issue, kind of like what you're saying. It's like the sun's out, weather's getting nice. Here comes King Worm. Let's get in an exterminator or go talk to somebody who can handle the exterior of our house, because King Worm's coming back every freaking summer. And he's just, or April, right? And he's just wrecking havoc with Finn and Jake, and they don't know what's going on. You think at this point he'd have an idea. My initial thought, because when I was thinking about this, and I was like, okay, did anything matter? Did anything actually happen?
Mm-hmm. That's where my mind went initially as well.
I was just thinking, I choose to ignore this episode. If that's the case, while I love the theoretical intention behind this notion, right, that oh my gosh, nothing actually happened. It was all a dream. For the sake of simplicity, I would rather just ignore it. I would rather ignore this episode in its entirety, and there's just too many good episodes in between this one and Evicted for me. And they've grown so much and so much has happened. I can't handle that. That's almost stressing me out thinking about, oh, nothing mattered. Because that's 2 years of my life, Ned. This is my first time through this show.
Don't
2 years
worry,
of my life doesn't matter now.
If that had been the case, or if I came into this episode really saying, yeah, let's get theoretical, let's pretend like none of this happened, I really tried to look at it from all angles, analyzing this episode, and I just don't think it's a possibility that all of it was fake. I'd just be like you said, they leave and he goes and continues to have a relationship with Flame Princess, which didn't exist back in season 1. So it had to have been a real thing that was happening.
Had to have been, right? And I know there's been talk about other universes, or what is it? Other multiverse theory, right? So other Finns, I'm kind of hoping we're not getting into oh, what fin was this episode actually about? Oh, well, it looks like the right fin, but maybe it's not the right fin. Just like the whole Rick and Morty thing, that stresses me out where it's like,
no.
It the right Rick or the wrong Rick?
We never really get too into that. There's a little aspect of it that shows up kind of like in later seasons. It never gets as like convoluted as the whole like, oh, they picked up the wrong Jerry from day camp and Rick and Morty, like that whole theory.
Exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Where the continuity errors are on purpose and to throw off the audience. I don't think that they're doing that just quite yet. They keep things pretty, for a multiverse theory type show, they stay relatively direct.
Okay.
They don't go. There's a few episodes that get a little like time warp stuff, but don't worry about that with King Worm's episode. The only thing that I will say is fun with this episode, and this one's more for the fans. I'm trying to do it without spoiling anything, but Mirror Finn, the whole Finn with the fake, you see him with the metal arm, he's got the weird nose. We saw BMO in BMO Noir, like one of the last episodes, have that interesting looking face looked very similar. So it's Farm World Finn. And so there is just this dynamic, I'm sure, of what they're putting in here, that are dreams a gateway or some sort of envisionment, third eye type thing into different alternate universal versions of yourself.
Wow.
So that's a theory there, I'm sure, with the whole like woke up in the treehouse and sees Farm World Finn in his vision. And that's as much as I can say about that, because that's any more could be a spoiler drop.
Yeah, no, that's fine, man. Well, that's good. That does make me feel a little bit better about this episode, and I will, for the sake of my own sanity, probably just try and forget this one. Though worth a watch. I don't think there's anything wrong with this episode. I think it's a good episode as far as Adventure Time episodes go, and it certainly does kind of play in that very like small box that you kind of enjoy when we're talking about Adventure Time, Treehouse episodes. It sort of feels like that, even though they do adventure out a little bit, and they have the moment with Joshua and whatnot.
Yeah, there's a lot of other characters involved for it to be considered like a Treehouse episode for me. Like Treehouse episodes have to be like, 4 characters are minimum for me, typically.
Have you ever been able to lucid dream? It does remind me of that, simply because Finn is effectively in a lucid dream. He's able to go, I want a sword, right? Like, and a sword pops up, and then unfortunately his subconscious fear or whatever, where he kind of is like, oh, well, usually when I try and do this in dreams, a shark will appear out of nowhere. So have you ever had like a lucid dream experience?
I'd say
have you been able to do that?
If I have like intense dreams where there's like a setting really happens, like, or there's like a lot of people that I'm like recognizing, and maybe like a setting, like right before I wake up, if I'm kind of like, I know, it's like 5:45 and my body kind of wakes up, but I'm halfway in between a dream. Like I'm not waking up. When I go back to sleep, I can sometimes like control my thoughts, because I'm kind of like, oh, I know, like I'm kind of dreaming, but it's still not the whole like lucid, like I'm in complete control. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. And I'm not just going to wake up in 2 seconds, because that's what happens to me. I realize that I'm dreaming, and then as soon as I do that, I'm awake. I had a buddy in college who used to paint one of his fingernails a different color. And his theory,
so he can look down.
Yes. His thought was that he'd be able to look down at his hand in his dream to see if he was dreaming or not. And I think it was supposed to not be there if he was dreaming.
Yeah, it's the whole, I mean, we're going to get maybe into some Inception theory, but that's the whole mentality of like doing something consistent in the real world that you know about, to where if it's not that way so consistently that you're dreaming. It's a way to like ground, like the way people lucid dream, and obviously Inception is very different, but I know what he was trying to do there for sure. But so he said did he get good at it? Did he like,
I don't know, man. I think he was able to do it, but he was one of those guys that like I kind of trusted, but I also was like, he could just be making the story up, because no one really wants to hear about your dream. Like that's the other thing is I could sit here and tell you about a dream I had the other night that was wild and blew my mind. And I woke up and I was like telling Allie about it the next day. I was like, I think I just saw death. Like this old man in my dream, kind of like the River Styx type thing, or the Crossroad, right, where he gives you a musical instrument and you become amazing at it.
The devil himself.
That's sort of what happened, anyways. But dreams are only so interesting to hear about because they are not based in reality in any way. But this episode, there are little things that I think keep it based in reality enough for us to be completely fascinated by it the entire time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's funny because so kind of what you're talking about with your friend doing that kind of method to lucid dream in order to get him deeper into the dream state and get him in more control. That's actually an interesting part of this episode is that Finn flips the script here and he's like, I actually have to make myself wake up. And in order to do that, what is it? Jake says, if your fears will gronk up the dreamscape and the dreamscape will fall apart.
Yeah, he's got to deteriorate it by basically causing his own fears to start occurring. Which is so dude, I love what you're talking about because the Phil guy or the Phil face or whatever, the character that's on the back of Pet Butt in this episode, he screamed Satori, and I had to look that up because I was so interested in what Satori meant because it seemed like an intentional throwaway, like real quick. And Satori means it's a term used to define a deep meditative state in which an individual becomes enlightened. And so it's kind of what you're saying. It's like this whole episode is Finn, in a sense, it could, if it's referring to this episode of him trying to be enlightened enough to realize how to break out of this dream. And I think Peppermint Butler is kind of helping him, but Finn's subconscious, this entire episode is constantly fighting against the dream in an attempt to understand what is happening. Like at the very beginning, Princess Bubblegum turns to Pet Butt and says he doesn't know he's dreaming, which has to be his subconscious kind of plugging that into his head. And then his subconscious,
I think, is helping trying to defend him against the worms.
Yeah,
mentality.
Totally.
And that his subconscious, as Pet Butt says, you got to get rid of the worm, and that's why. That's why when Pet Butt, as soon as Pet Butt says that, his face goes and it's like gets scrubbed off. But then Pet Butt keeps talking through his hand. The worm's fighting
back. Yeah,
the worm's trying to fight Finn's subconscious of like, no, just stay in this dream state. Like, don't question anything. And his subconscious like, hey man, like you can beat this. So I think that proves that Finn's got that adventure strength to defeat his self-conscious has a defense mechanism to even help his like mind protect itself.
Yeah, I mean, I actually kind of had if I have a theoretically speaking, it's that's actually Peppermint Butler like jumping into Finn's subconscious, trying to say like, hey man, like this is how you do it. Here's the solution, because after that, nothing else is going to give him the solution except for Jake, and the mirror is going to remind him of it. But he already knows the solution at that point. So in my mind, Finn's subconscious is already fighting it because Princess Bubblegum says he doesn't know he's dreaming, the Pet Butt. And then Pet Butt comes in my mind, and gives him the warning and the solution to break the dream. And then Phil, which is Finn's subconscious again, saying Satori, which is, hey, like, dude, you need to reach like kind of this at peace and find enlightenment through what's happening and find the way out. And like, think about the things around you that are occurring, and the fact that Peppermint Butler just kind of gave it away. And there are other little moments where like Finn gets scared for a minute or something like that, and a window breaks in the background, and all these little things that are signs. It's like his subconscious like constantly being like, oh, like here's another clue. And Jake, in my mind, is when he states they go into the room. I'm gonna give a little context. They go into the room, and you have Lady there. Lady has two mouths, and Jake is terrible at packaging up a package with the tape that's coming out of Lady's mouth. And he basically tells Finn, like, hey, you need to blow up the dreamscape with your fear. But I kind of took that in a different way. Like, I kind of thought it might have been King Worm trying to scare Finn away from the solution in a sense. And it just ends up backfiring because Finn's subconscious is so constantly reminding him of what he needs to do, right? Like,
No. I think you're on the right wavelength here. But when Finn, he thinks about the sword, and then he's like, oh, I usually think about sharks trying to eat me, and the shark shows up. That Jake in this essence is probably King Worm's influence, or a not real Jake, is like, hey, like, don't think about anything too scary, man, because it'll gronk up the dreamscape. And that sounds like a bad thing at this time.
Yes, so definitely. Because in my mind, that does sound terrifying. Like, does that mean you die? You know, sort of.
Exactly. And I think that's why, you know, if Finn's shark that was so scary had, you know, eaten Finn and like killed him in the dream, then odds are he would have just woken up at that point. So it's kind of probably King Worm's mentality of Jake being there to like, yeah, buddy, like, I'll help you out. Like, we'll adventure together and like, let's stay in this dream longer, feed on your life energy a little bit longer.
Yeah, because Finn totally just assumes that it's Jake. He's just like, oh, this must be the real Jake.
Yeah.
Like, Jake does go and pinch him and he says, oh, I'm just making sure you're real.
And it would make sense. It would make sense that Jake is the most compelling of the characters because Finn, so much of Finn's subconscious knows Jake's true character,
like what he's going to do,
exactly, how he would behave. So that's like
he dreams that he's trapped, right, with his best buddy. So of course his best buddy is going to act like his best buddy, and that was the easiest figure for King Worm to take and bring into this dream sequence and have them be like linked together or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so of course Finn's going to trust him. He's going to assume, oh, you seem relatively normal, so you must be real. And that was kind of the, you know, I don't want to just be referencing Rick and Morty, but there is that hologram episode where it's just someone like a PC basically being like, oh, no, you're good. Just keep going. You know, you're on the right path, and trying to lead him into nothing so that King Worm can sap his life energy and essentially kill him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the longer he could stay in the dream, the more that King Worm's going to suck the life energy regardless. Yeah. But it's funny to me how, like, I guess there's some sort of mentality about if you destroy the dreamscape, it destroys King Worm. So like it is a reverse effect that he's sucking out. I didn't quite get that mentality. It's just breaking his own dreamscape, but it totally destroys King Worm in that regard.
I think it's like his power, right? It kind of feels like you're attacking him by attacking the dreamscape. Like he's kind of linked to it in some sort of a way. And maybe that's because he's draining Finn's life energy. It's kind of like in order to do that, he has to tap into his own life energy.
Or you know what it probably was. Actually, I'm trying to think about this kind of in regards to even Inception, the way like all that whole Inception movie works, where it's like, oh, the more you're aware and you're the dream, your self-conscious attacks itself to wake yourself up and all that stuff. Is that what if like Finn's life source is so positive, which is why King Worm goes to Finn to get this life energy. So if Finn just only focuses on fears and negative life energy, which is all of his fears, that King Worm's still absorbing it, but he's only absorbing the worst of
the negative,
Finn's,
the worst.
Fear energy.
I kind of like both of those equally. At first, when you started off, I was like, thoughts. I like my theory. I was like, I kind of like what I just said, but no, I do like that as well. It's
good. All stuff that works, and which is like I'm not disagreeing with you in anything you're saying at all.
Well, that's great. This episode just doesn't have a solution, which is there are things that we could take as fact and that we can take as like this obviously happened. But as far as what we just said, both could be technically correct in the minds of the writer. I don't think either of those two thoughts are flawed necessarily.
Yeah, there's definitely this one, along with so many Adventure Time episodes yet to come, where I think there's a lot of the takeaway and a lot of the interpretation is totally left to be subjective and totally left to be in the mind of the viewer, I guess. Because, I've got some more to say. And actually, I was going to do a full breakdown of some of these fears themselves and going back to that, how that pertains to Finn. But I do think we need to take a breather before we get into any more deep space. So let's go back to our bad advertisement. Take a break. We'll breathe, get our fears in check, get Russell's shit in check, and then we'll bring it back home.
Yeah.
Attention all you Candy Kingdom adventurers. Are you tired of those pesky nightmare worms ruining your sweet dreams? Well, fear not, because down here at Starchy Surplus and Supplements, we have the solution you're looking for. Introducing the all-new Wondrous Worm Wreck and Wash, the world's first and only worm-repellent nighttime body wash that is guaranteed guaranteed to keep them creepy crawlies at bay. Our wondrous worm-wrecking wash is formulated with the finest psychic insect repellents and is designed to create an invisible, mystical barrier around your sleeping area, keeping them nightmare worms at a safe distance. But that's not all. Charger Surplus and Supplements stores also carry a wide variety of other psychic insect repellents, including our best-selling BMO's Buzzin' Bane and Lumpy Space Princess's Lavender Leech Repellent Lotion. So come on down and stock up on all your favorite products today. Disclaimer, worm-wrecking wondrous wipers maybe cause dizziness, nausea, and spontaneous bursts of big-time poo-poos. Use it at your own risk. And we're back, coming at you live really quick, hitting Russell with the scary times.
Oh, gosh. I wasn't ready for this, Ned. I'm completely caught off guard. Not nude. I was going to say nude, but I'm not. You can see me. I hope you understand that. Yes, I have clothes on.
We have. Is that your fear dream? Is waking up in the nudes?
My fear is that one day we have a video element to this podcast, and I'm caught off guard, and I forget about it, and I'm just like, I thought it was just me and Ned recording nude like we always do, you know.
I don't think I've ever had like a nude dream like that before. At least like not like a fearful nude dream.
You've never like walked into a classroom and didn't have your short like underwear on or something? Well,
no,
that wouldn't matter. You would have shorts on still. You didn't have shorts on and your underwear was showing. You were just free balling. You were so afraid because you were free balling, you know?
Hey man, that is not anything. I guess it's just not like a fear concern of mine. As it comes to classrooms, a reoccurring fear dream of mine absolutely is one where I am taking some sort of college course or high school course, and I show up to like class and it's like, oh, you've been in this class for a month and you haven't even cracked open the book. And I'm like, oh no, let me go home and study. And then all of a sudden I can't study and I get distracted. And then I'm at the final and it's just like, you haven't even learned anything this year. And that is a legitimate, like once every 4 to 5 months reoccurring dream.
Dude, what? I have
it's terrifying.
Almost that exact dream. Except for, and now we're doing what I said is not interesting to do, which is talk about your dreams. But I do that same thing where I go into a classroom and I'm like, sweet, social studies, no problem. I like social studies. I'll do the reading. And then I don't do the reading. And then every day I go back to the class. I'm like, I had to do the reading. It's fine. I'll catch up eventually. And then out of nowhere, I'm at the final. Like I'm like, dude, I'm great on my other courses, but I got to pass this social studies final. And I don't know anything because I never did any of the reading. And probably knowing me, I slept all of high school, like certain classes. I just slept and then did the reading. But I didn't do the reading. So then I don't know anything. And then I wake up and it sucks. I hate that dream, man.
It's very much more like, it's not fear, it's anxiety. That there's much more like anxiety. And that's actually what I think maybe as an adult, like I don't have, is it weird? I don't have nightmares anymore. Like maybe once in a while I'll have like a little moment where something really scary like wakes me up. But I think I just watched too many like fucked up scary movies that like I don't ever have anything that like sticks with me anymore. In terms of like I had such a scary night.
Man, I'm too afraid to say that. I kind of feel the same way, but like I know
you don't want to jinx yourself.
I don't want to go to sleep tonight and wake up sweating. I mean, most of mine are like a reality nightmares. It's like what we were just talking about.
I'm way more anxious about real life shit than I am about like a scary monster in the woods. Like,
yeah, a lot of mine as a kid would be like one of my parents would be gone. Like they would die, but it would just be like, and this was a reoccurring dream. I'd like go into their bathroom because they supposedly were there, and like the water is on or something, and like they're gone, or like their clothes are on the ground. They did like a Obi-Wan Kenobi disappear sort of a thing.
They like raptured right out of the bathroom.
Yeah, and then we would just go to like McDonald's and I'd play on the playground and stuff, and someone would be like, oh, I'm sorry about your like mom is gone. She disappeared, right? And then I wake up. It was so weird. But no, man, I'm fortunate to say that I haven't had a scary dream in a hot second, which is pretty nice.
Yeah. Well, it's like I don't know if it's like a growing up and it's a good segue because I feel like part of the fears with Finn as we're going through this season, and we've had like actually the last several episodes talking about Finn directly with his growing up and maturing. And I think that maybe an aspect of this episode is a lot of what is overlooked is that they do a really good job of this being super, super canonical, even when you don't think about it. We mentioned the first aspect of that is that almost every one of our main characters is referenced here. We've got Peppa, we've got Princess Bubblegum, we've got Flame Princess, we've got Joshua, we've got Lady Rainicorn, everybody pretty much but Marceline, because like, I don't know, she's powerful enough to keep herself out of dreams. Regardless, we also have Finn address not just a fear that was like obvious from his whole Ocean of Fear episode, the Fear Feaster, and he's scared of the ocean. That was like one of the first episodes we learned about like a Finn fearing something.
Mark Hamill, I believe.
And yeah. What?
I'm pretty sure Fear Feaster himself is voiced by Mark Hamill.
Oh yeah, no, you are right. You're right. Sorry, I thought you said something else, and I was like, what are you talking about?
Sorry,
yes,
I just
Mark
love
Hamill as the Fear Feaster. And that even in this stream, all of his fears are coming out of his belly button, which is what happens in Ocean of Fear. Is that the Fear Feaster comes out of his belly button, if you don't remember that aspect.
Yeah, deepest gut fear, right? So that makes sense.
Exactly. And so that's why part of this one, when Finn realizes and pretend Jake goes, if you grunk up the dream space with your fears, the dreamscape will collapse on itself. And at that moment, you see this cutscene of the Fear Feaster unlocking a box, which I think is also a very important little cutscene, because if you think about it, at the end of Ocean of Fear, Finn's like, I'm not afraid of the ocean, but I still am, but I'm going to put this behind me.
And then Creeps, season 3, episode 12, he was even like, let's put that deep inside the memory vault.
Put it in the memory vault, and it's gone.
Because you have this spooky ghost lady again who freaking shows up, and she's my most punchable character for sure.
Shoko shows up again, which is a big one. Shoko shows up. The clown shows up. That's from Another Way. Princess Bubblegum saying you're too young is from What Was Missing. And
right, because it's a lyric in his song.
Yeah.
Do you look down on me because I'm younger is the line from his song from What Was Missing.
Exactly.
Can't remember what the song was called though. But yeah.
Oh yeah, gosh. It's gonna be like Best Friends in the World, I think.
I think you're right. That song gets stuck in my head like regularly now, y'all. Yeah. Just let you know, like once a week I'll just be like, you are my best friends in the world.
That's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear, that it's constantly in your head now. Just
yeah, so many of these.
But the really cool aspect of that is that Finn on purpose unlocks this box of suppressed fear, that on purpose, and it unlocks everything all at once, which is the ocean and the Lich and Princess Bubblegum and Shoko and clowns. And I think that's like kind of what we were talking about. Like, why don't we have these scary nightmares and dreams anymore? And it's like, I think it's because it's part of that growing up where you start to, I don't know, grow beyond what you were scared of as a child. And there are still scary things in the world, but they're just not the Lich anymore,
Yeah.
I think there's a point now where he still fights the Lich more in the future. Spoiler, figured that you would know.
Yeah,
but it's
no
not
surprise.
like a fear. It's not like he fears the Lich anymore. It's not like
so do you think this is him conquering those fears? Do you think he's getting over his fear of the ocean in this episode and everything else?
I think it's not on purpose, but I think it happens as a proxy to him needing to get out of this dreamscape, and that's the only way he can do it. And by proxy, he's like, I have to face all these fears at once. I have to get over my fears, and that's what breaks my dreamscape. And probably once he exits that dreamscape, I think that there's probably something in that, weird, maybe pseudo physical world where those fears just disappear because they're just out of his belly button now. I don't know.
Okay.
Like, he got him out, and then the escape broke, and now those fears are gone. So that's my theoretically speaking, long-winded one as well.
I love that Princess Bubblegum was like, sorry, I'm joining the Lich for coffee. You just wouldn't understand. You're too young. That was my favorite part of that. But no, I think that's a pretty good, theoretically speaking. And I'm very curious about this spooky ghost lady. Would you call her Shoko?
Shoko. Yeah.
Shoko.
Shoko. It makes more sense later. You want more answers from the Shoko story. I think they really do it too quickly for how much they led up to it.
Okay.
But it's coming. There's an explanation why that's at this point a reoccurring character per se.
Okay, well that's cool. Well, dude, if you had to take on this scenario, King Worm, what fear would you bring up in order to kind of deteriorate the dream space and break him down?
I mean, if you wanted to do a adult reality one, it's going to be exactly that same thing and be like, okay, let me go take this biology test that I don't know anything about biology whatsoever. That would totally break it and be like, grunk up the dreamscape. I did, as a little kid, have this one dream where, I don't know, my mom used to read us the Chronicles of Narnia. And in the last book, there's this like dark figure with yellow eyes in the woods called like Tash, something like that. And for some reason that like spooked me as a kid. I had a very, very vivid dream of like being in the woods dark at night and like dark things, like a dark thing coming at me from like behind a tree. That's for sure. Like still, like I still can't really do like pitch black woods at night.
Wow.
That still kind of gets to me a little bit. Okay. So that would, from a physical mentality, that's probably what it would be. But I don't know. What about, are you in a similar state with like darkness and?
No, it would just, I was thinking about this and I'm like, it literally would just cut to like a POV of someone like free soloing a building or mountains and then falling like that. That's like my dude. Whenever
like
I see
snap
those,
into reality type thing,
I don't know. There's something about the free soloing videos, especially like the dude in Russia who's just like free soloing on a snowy building or something like that. Or look, I can hang from one hand, and my palms and my feet get so sweaty. Sweating. I think that would be enough to where, especially if they ended up falling, like that would, dude. I could not watch a video where the worst happens. And so that's what would come up. That's what I would think of to fight the King Worm.
That's so real though. So it's like I don't know.
But I'm never going to be in that situation.
Like, do you have a rash? Well, do you have that's a rational fear? Like that's an absolutely like.
Well, it's rational, but I'll never be there. I'll never be in that situation because I don't do that.
Situation. Yeah. But it's one of those things where it's like, of course your palms are sweaty because that's like a situation that if you were in, you would die. Now there's other ones that's also on the flip side of like, I mean, I guess you could call them potentially rational, but like, you know, when you're watching like demon movies and the demon has like 6 arms and a bloody mouth and a bloody face and you're like, that's scary, but like it's not rational fear per se. You know what I mean?
I mean, I'd have just anything. We know this about me.
I know you don't do scary
I scare
movies.
easily. So just anything would be enough. Even like standing in water and then seeing a shark fin and then the shark fin disappears and then you're just like in knee deep water and you can't do anything. You can't see, especially like the Atlantic coast where all the water is brown and muggy and gross. I couldn't do it, man. It'd be so easy for me to take on the King Worm.
Yeah, because you would just think of all the rational things in life that would kill you. Which
just literally anything. I'd sit there and just like start thinking about loneliness and just be like,
but I wouldn't.
Oh man,
I wouldn't call you like an anxious or scared person.
No, well, I hide it, Ned. I'm always scared.
I'm always scared. What is that?
I'm always scared.
I'm always angry. That's my secret. I'm always scared. That's my Hulk secret of why I can always defeat King Worm.
Yeah, I'm the Hulk of being scared for sure.
I'm always scared. All right, weird because I wanted to talk about this one just in case you had one. It's a weird episode, that one. Did you have a lovely for this episode?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, who was your lovely?
It's Pep Butt, man. It's Peppermint Butler. The idea that he is reaching out into Finn's dream space, or he realized something's wrong. I don't know his intention. I don't know exactly much about him because we're not diving too deep into him until maybe later in the show. But I like the idea of a well-meaning Peppermint Butler. And I like the idea of he does have some abilities that we haven't seen. We know he is friends with Death, right? Or he used to hang out with Death. And we know he used to hang out with Hudson Abadir. So I like the idea that there's more to Peppermint Butler. And sometimes, depending on the situation, he chooses to be good or chooses to be bad. Based off of, he's like a gray Jedi or something, right? He's
I'd say I don't ever necessarily know if he chooses to be bad. I think he just has a knowledge of a lot of like the knowledge of evil things, which again allows him to enter on purpose, this like evil worm dreamscape to help Finn out at the end of the day.
Yeah,
but he had to sacrifice a child to get there.
No, yeah,
a candy child.
He had the resort to cannibal with what's his face, Starchy. Which we haven't seen Starchy in a minute.
We haven't seen Starchy in a minute. We haven't really seen Cinnamon Bun in a minute, which comes back up in the late. Cinnamon Bun becomes a way bigger character in later parts of the season, which
I would not be able to guess. Yeah, I would have never guessed.
I know my lovely was the Gunter monsters.
The Gunter monsters, yeah.
The Gunter monsters were awesome in this episode, and I think it was just, conceptually speaking, that Ice King could have like a Voltron, Megatron version of Gunter is very fun.
Well, in thinking about like what all the different things in this dream means, right? And I didn't dive too deep in, as we know, I only brought two. There is a third one. Apparently, a bunch of LSPs raining down on you in your dream. It means that you're a dungus, you dingus. So
you dungus, you dingus.
Just saying, all right. That was wild. I was like, why is LSP in this episode as rain and snow?
Because, well, for Finn's sake, and if this is Finn's, again, dreamscape of his subconscious mind, LSP is just everywhere. She's just at random places, like all the time. So she might as well be falling out of the sky. The only thing, and I wanted to get this is my last thought on the episode, and then we're going to close it out, promise. Because we're going on wonderful tangents in this episode. So when Ice King does run up to them, right? He's like, Fiona, Cake, what are you doing here? Does Finn know that Ice King calls, or does he know at this point that Ice King does fan fiction on Fiona and Cake?
I can't remember how
I can't remember
if Fiona and Cake happened.
If it was from Holly Jolly Secrets that Ice King was talking about Fiona and Cake in the video diaries.
No, I don't think so.
Finn has found or seen Ice King talking about Fiona and Cake fan fiction.
I'm pretty sure they interrupt him at the end, right? I don't know, dude. I have to rewatch the Fiona and Cake episode because at the end of that, something happens, which is why we were like, oh, we're going to do this meta joke about Allie and Jackie doing the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. Oh, no, maybe he is reading. Does he have them tied up and he's reading, or he has somebody tied up and he's reading them the fan fiction?
We'll have to check on that, and then we'll come back next episode. Yeah.
I just was like, man, that would be really trippy if they didn't know that Fiona and Cake fan fiction existed.
Well, I'm pretty sure Finn went, huh? Finn was like unsure what he was talking about.
They were like, what are you talking about? And so that just led me to like, I didn't even have a logical, theoretically speaking, if Finn doesn't know about Fiona and Cake, then how did it end up in his dream? Is, again, Ice King's crazy magical subconscious something that could leak into King Worm's hypnotic dream sequences? I have no idea.
I don't know.
Well, too many theoretically speaking.
Yeah. Let's do a real quick traveler's log, and then we'll cut to lessons, and then we'll head out. Yeah. So this week's traveler's log comes from Luke, and Luke basically is just saying that he appreciates the podcast. He listens every week, and especially during his shifts. And the most recent episode involving Magic Man and the Sons of Mars had him really invested, especially when Russell ranted about how Magic Man's punishment is so minute, made him contemplate the last lines from the episode. He wins again, just like always. Can't wait for episode 101. Just another traveler, Lewis. But not a DJ name. Anyways, thank you, Luke, for chiming in and joining the Traveler's Log.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, I love that rant. I'm not gonna lie. I was really proud of that one. I was like, oh man, like these punishments are so weak. Like they're awesome. The punishments are dope, and he deserves so much worse.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true, and just it makes you believe. Like, I guess that Mars society is like really different for some reason. That those are equal punishments to what he's actually done to all of them.
The rich and the powerful, man, they're treated differently in Mars, not on Earth, in Mars.
Treated differently on Mars. Yeah. Abe Lincoln's got different sets of punishment for the bad boys.
Abe Lincoln. I forgot about that. I love that, man. Well, what's your lesson from this episode? Do you have one? I've got one, if not.
It's a light one. I had a lot more deep thoughts and like theories and stuff than taking away anything. But maybe one is don't trust your bros when they show up in your dreams.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Also, confronting your fears in a healthy way can obviously be a good way to get back into a good headspace, aka not being possessed by giant worms. So, I think there is something deeper lesson is that dreams are not necessarily pointless. I try not to read too much into them, but being introspective with your dreams is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good way to either work through headspace stuff, become more self-aware, etc. There's some value to that. So
yeah, that's great.
That's deep, but not like too deep.
No, that's awesome, man. My lesson is pretty surface level. Just be honest with you. It's get an exterminator. Got to get those worms out, yo.
Gotta get the exterminator.
Got to get those worms out, yo.
Nah, I got them Arrow pest control.
Oh, come on. Arrow?
I know.
Jeez, dude. Yeah. It's all about all good.
It's all about the red rusty rooter pest control, whatever the Russell family pest control is.
It was all good back in the day. It's not that anymore. All good is now owned by somebody else. But yeah, anyways, I didn't go into it. So as y'all know, doing music publishing up in Nashville, Tennessee. And that is not where any of my family is. Well, thank you much. Thank you much. Thank you so much.
Thank you muches.
Thank you mucho much for joining us. You can check us out on Instagram if you just so feel, the desire to, at Never Ending Adventure Podcast, TikTok at Never Ending Adventure Cast, Twitter at NEA_podcast. I've been a whole lot more active on Twitter recently. It's been kind of fun to dive into it, but I'll be honest with y'all. I don't know how the heck you grow an audience on Twitter. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So
I don't think there's much audience on Twitter, man. I think Twitter's fake at this point in time.
Twitter's fake. You heard it here first.
It is a media platform for famous people, for consumers to go and consume.
News outlets.
I don't think. Yeah. I think it's a news outlet that prides itself on, like, you can comment on what Pete Davidson said. But like nobody's over there being like, oh yeah, like 1,000 retweets for what Russell said.
What did Pete Davidson say? Do you know? Just off the top of your head?
No. Blue blop, blee blop.
Yeah.
Fuck your mom.
Says Pete Davidson. Okay. Allegedly.
All
right, y'all. On that note, I think it's time. I think we're gonna go talk about Ricardio after this. So give us a break.
Give us a break.
Gross. Party forever.
All right, that's what you guys.